Hi everybody, welcome to the Land, Leisure and Tourism podcast, where we explore ideas and innovations shaping the future of farming, rural business and tourism across the UK. I am your host, Adeyele. Today we are delving into a topic that is becoming increasingly important for farmers, landowners and developers alike, and this is biodiversity net gain, or BNG as some people refer to it. So to help us unpack this, I am joined by two fantastic guests from Biofarm, a company that is dedicated to restoring harmony between people and nature.
I'm land director here at Biofarm. My background is in land and planning for the last 22 years.
I'm an ecologist at Biofarm and I have a background in research and biomonitoring.
All right, so let's get into it. So let's start with the basics, right? We've all heard about biodiversity. Can you explain exactly what that means and why is it so important?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Biodiversity essentially means the variety of all life on Earth. So it starts at the ecosystem level, it works down through habitats, communities, species interactions, right down to species, and then the actual genetic diversity within those individual species. So it's really important as a concept to recognise that it underpins what we call ecosystem services and their delivery. And it's a phrase that I think is quite underused in the industry and something that we need to be talking about more because it really places the importance on the services that nature provides us, the indirect and direct benefits that nature gives us as humans. So for example, like we have the recreational services, like mental health benefits and ecotourism, which is obviously super important. But then we also have the services that underpin our society as a whole and, you know, how we function. So functioning provisional supporting services like clean air, healthy soil, clean water, disease and pest control, climate regulation, flood mitigation. And these are the ones that we really need to be thinking about when we're thinking about the longevity of our economy as a whole and our markets. Unfortunately, we've actually lost half our biodiversity since the Industrial Revolution, and this puts us in the worst out of the G7 nations for biodiversity intactness, which then places us in the worst 10% globally. So it's pretty bad, and it is having a knock-on effect of our economy as well. So WWF and the Green Finance Institute just released a report which states that we will lose 4.7% of our GDP to nature loss in the next decade. So when thinking about nature, as an ecologist, it's really easy to say, oh, we should be preserving it because we love it and because it's pretty, but that's actually not enough for us to recognise as a society how important it is and integral it is to our systems and for keeping those intact. So BNG is quite revolutionary in that it's putting nature and biodiversity at the forefront of the design process and really making sure that we're considering those ecosystem services, not just for preserving nature for the nicety of it, but to make sure that our developments have climate resilience as well.
Wow, what a fantastic overview. Thank you so much for that. And Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously Evie's covered biodiversity and we're going to go on to BNG as such. So it's really what it's allowed us to do, or BNG's allowed to happen, is that nature and construction now and nature and development can actually work together rather than against each other. And I think BNG is something which enables that to happen.
Could you actually give us a little bit more information on what BNG is and how it works in the context of land management or development?
Sure, certainly. So BNG stands for Biodiversity Net Gain. It's new legislation which came in off the back of the 2021 Environment Act. It's been passed in the Town and Country, formed part of the Town and Country Planning Act. And effectively what it is it means that developers have to leave their development land in a better state for nature than it was before. So in short, they have to, by law now, improve biodiversity on site of at least 10% from before they started development. And if they cannot provide that on site, then they need to look off site for a solution. And this then presents an opportunity for the landowner to register parts of their land for nature restoration projects where they can actually sell these units as such, habitat units, for the developer's need. So it's a needs-based market at the minute where there's this compulsory legislation or mandatory legislation that's in. And a point to make is that the developer must complete on purchasing these units and have this solution in place as a pre-commencement planning condition. So they cannot begin their development until they've bought or have a solution on-site or off-site. And this has effectively created a marketplace for the landowner, a brand new marketplace that gives the opportunity for a landowner to have a new revenue stream, which is actually to do with restoring nature.
Wow, that is fantastic. Thank you so much again for that overview. So doing some digging into Biofarm, I know that the founders, started a farm project before the emergence of BNG. Can you just tell us a little bit about that journey?
Sure, yeah, no worries. So Andy and Phil, brothers, are the founders of Biofarm. So they come from a finance and property background. In 2021, they bought a farm in Somerset, Bath and North East Somerset, with the view of looking at it as a long-term investment. It was when they were on site with their ecologist at the time who introduced them to this new legislation coming through, a new potential marketplace for landowners, which was BNG. They realised quite quickly that it was complex and it was something that they felt they couldn't unlock the opportunity by themselves. They looked to the marketplace for companies that could help them do this. At the time, there was limited choice, but and the choice that was out there, they felt was unfair to the landowner, where the risk-reward balance was tipped in favour of the company and not the landowner. This was where their entrepreneurial spirit really kicked in, and they quickly thought of a model which they felt was lent towards the landowner, more fair to the landowner, and really helped reduce the risk and the barrier to entry for the landowner to quite a challenging land value extraction opportunity. So the core principles of the model are to retain ownership for the landowner so they don't lose their land and it's there for generations to come, to reduce the capital at risk so their cost is reduced, and also to reduce other risks which are involved in this, from legal, financial, and also habitat and land management risk as well. That basically outcame from all of this Biofarm, and we are set to restore nature for generations to come, but also to allow landowners to capitalise on the opportunity that's there.
Fantastic. And Evie, I'm sure you have some insights as well about this. This sounds great, so feel free to share.
I mean, from an ecological perspective, it's an amazing case study to work on. It's a beautiful site. It sits atop this big topographical feature. You can see all the way to Wales. It's got all these amazing springs underneath the plateau that sort of trickle down to form wetlands at the bottom. And it used to be a goat farm. So in the last few years, seeing that go from fairly intensive pasture to the hedges fattening out, more botanical interest emerging. It's quite special, and it's just really good for us as well as a company to be able to try all these management techniques so that we can then take it to our landowners and make suggestions on the pros and cons of different techniques and what the outcomes might be. We've got a couple of conservation grazing schemes as well, which we've been trialling. So we've got 11 longhorn cattle and I think 7 or 8 Exmoor ponies.
Yeah, I think it is.
Which have been brilliant. And it's so interesting from an ecological perspective to see how they use the land in different ways. They'll leave areas of open grassland and then other areas they won't use as much, so the scrub will sort of encroach. So yeah, it's been good to sort of trial our capacity as a team in our nature restoration techniques, and we're excited to be applying that to other sites across the country as well.
First of all, it sounds beautiful and it sounds amazing what you guys are doing. So I'm keen to learn even more about this.
Come and visit.
I will. If a family farm wanted to get involved, right, what would the process be with Biofarm to create a BNG scheme on their land?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first few questions you'd have to ask yourself is what is the baseline on the land?
Yeah.
So counterintuitively, we want something really low nature value because we want that uplift potential.
Yeah.
So, like cropland, intensive pasture, that kind of habitat. The second thing would be, where is it? So we're targeting areas that are likely to be in what we call the local nature recovery strategies.
Okay.
So there'll be formally identified areas for nature recovery, and those are sort of the areas that are being funneled for these projects so that we end up with corridors of nature, essentially. And then the third thing would be, what are your goals? It's a 30-year-long partnership, as Chris explained. So we're very keen to work with people who are like-minded. We won't be digging it up after 30 years, and we hope they won't either. So yeah, we're saying no to chainsaws, that kind of thing. But yeah, jokes aside, it's important that we share the same values and have a healthy partnership. So once those questions are sort of answered, we would go into the actual process, which would be myself and the ecology team going out to survey, getting the baseline, doing some botanical surveys, hydrology, soil, etc. And then transferring that data into what we call the habitat management and monitoring plan.
Okay.
So that's essentially the formal document that outlines the 30 years of the plan of how we're going to get these habitats. And that's very much landowner driven, because we recognise that a lot of these landowners have the machinery. They've been doing a lot similar or the same processes like hay cuts and grazing probably for generations. So they're usually more than competent and have the capacity to do it. So we really want them to lead that. They know the land as well. So yeah, we'll sort of write that together, and we'll provide guidance on things like seed mixes, what's appropriate for the area, and actual classifications. And then that is then used to register the site with Natural England. And then from there, the units can be marketed through our sales team.
Evie's right, we're really specific about what type of land or where the land is. So we're quite targeted and strategic on that. We give each project the best possible chance of success, and we don't want to waste the landowner's time. So that's a very selective process, and we know where we want it, and we know the conversations we want to have with landowners. And like Evie says, there's many stages in the process, but we make those as simple as possible for the landowner. So we have our ecology team and in-house, and we'll work through with the landowner and with them in consultation on what they'd like to see and what we feel the demand will be from developers, what type of habitats they will need, and also what the land can take. So yeah, we'll work on that. With the marketing and sales, each landowner project is a standalone 30-year project. They're large, and we have many of them. So we need to treat them individually as well as holistically. So we have budgets, marketing budgets for each project, and also we have a sales team that will be targeting and capturing demand in these areas geographically, so that we can make sure that each one's a success or give it the best possible chance.
Fantastic. It sounds so robust and thorough, and I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from all this information that you provided. So thank you very much for that. But what about other types of land, like family attractions and holiday parks? Can they also get involved in BNG projects?
In theory, they could. However, we feel and we see the opportunity is really with landowners who are estates and farmers. Probably 70% of our landowner partners are farms or farmers. The reason for this, though, is because the area of land that we need to make it a worthwhile project, both for financial returns but also for nature, is such that it lends itself to these types of landowners. Also, you're restricted on really just how you can use the land. You need to be careful that it's not damaged in any way, so it can create conflicts with other commercial operations. However, with our landowners that we do work with, there are some really good complementing revenue streams, alternative revenue streams that they also do on land, such as if farms did have holiday lodges on their land, it can work really well side by side. And also on the nature side of things.
Yeah, I guess what's important that Chris touched on is that it just isn't detrimental to the habitat target types and conditions, because we have these targets that we're having to meet at the end of the 30 years that we have to report on. So it's within the landowner's interest to not put an amusement park on it, I guess, because that could obviously impact the grassland quite a lot. But there are a lot of ways, as Chris said, to do activities that are complementary. We look at holiday lodges. You can still graze livestock. As I said, we are on our project in Somerset, and you can still obviously sell that for meat. And then the hay cuts, you can do like agroforestry. A lot of regenerative farming techniques are still viable. So there is an opportunity there to stack the income. I think the main point here is that we need a certain amount of land because we're following these principles of it being bigger, better and more joined up, because we really want sites that are going to contribute to large-scale landscape recovery. Those smaller projects, under 20 acres, they're still worthwhile for sure, but it is that balance, and as an ecologist, it is that balance of the project being commercially viable, but also ecologically viable. So we're just having to hit those trade-offs, and I think that's a really interesting part of BNG. It's the first time that we've had to consider those two things hand in hand and find a balance. So that's quite a challenge, but it's also interesting for sure.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So how does Biofarm support its clients through the process, especially when it comes to compliance and regulation and all of that stuff?
Yeah, it's a really good question and a really important one. Biofarm's existence is valued because it is a complex opportunity. The opportunity for the landowner financially and for nature is incredible, but like I say, it's challenging. And we've seen, as expected, we've kind of, as predicted, we've seen private landowners that have registered sites for BNG themselves and are trying to sell units themselves. Understanding the challenges, now they've had a year or so to try and create a successful project. The challenges generally lie around the law, the legal, the financial, and also the sales and marketing of units. Capturing that demand is much more challenging than first thought. At each stage, there are environmental, so ecological, financial, legal obligations that have to be upheld. Biofarm have the resource and the structure where we have in-house teams and departments for each of these. And so as and when it's needed, we will cover that off. So effectively, Biofarm deal with all of the heavy lifting and all of that cost as well up front. So it makes the opportunity for the landowner quite simple. Ultimately, it's time and as much involvement as they do or don't want in the project that the landowner has to commit. Evie, you might want to just mention a couple of other things on compliance, etc.
Yeah, I think firstly, having that multifaceted approach is really important, as Chris says, because each department is so complex and it's also a nascent market still. Obviously, it was 2021 it was passed, so we're still at the bleeding edge of it. The providers, the private sector are still working out how to do this because there is a lack of secondary legislation. So we are kind of part of working out how to implement this. And a big part of that, as Chris alluded to, is compliance. So from an ecological perspective, it's really important because at the end of the day, we're trying to help the landowner and we're trying to obviously make the company successful, but we're also trying to get a net gain in biodiversity. So making sure that the calculations around that and how we're implementing the theory of it is really essential. And it's important as well from a legal perspective because, as I mentioned, we are reporting on the targets and how we're achieving those. So we report to a responsible body for the landowner and ensure that all the compliance is in place. So having us to go through in that respect takes away some of the risk because we have those connections and we're sort of talking to everyone behind the scenes.
And there's economies of scale in all of this. So we've worked a lot out and we've worked hard to find solutions that do reduce the risk for the landowner. Not only do we make sure it's done properly, like Evie says, with compliance, but also we do our best to make sure it's a success by having a great sales and marketing engine that can capture all that demand and know about the project.
So with everything that you've said, it just sounds like clients are going to get so much support from you. But one thing I'm keen to find out from you, Evie, is what is the most memorable biodiversity project you've worked on so far?
Yeah, it's a good question. They're all the ones we have are, sounds cliche, but special in their own way. Obviously, as Chris said, we're really strategic with where we get these sites. So we're fortunate to work on such a wide range of really interesting ones, both ecologically and, in terms of the landowners that we get to work with as well. We have a lot of really important partnerships to us. But I guess if I had to pick one, we've got one in Cornwall that sits atop this valley which leads down into a river, and the valley is basically saturated with this ancient Celtic rainforest. I know, it's crazy, but it's like something from a Tolkien novel. Like, it's got 1,000-year-old trees, it's got hundreds of species of lichen and moss that don't exist anywhere else. They're nationally scarce because they've evolved under these really specific like humidity and temperature ranges. These places, these irreplaceable habitats, they have global genetic importance as well as cultural, historical significance and importance for ecotourism. But unfortunately, I mean, in this case, those types of habitats, those woodlands have declined 93% in their original extent, because of habitat fragmentation, and they continue to be threatened by like air pollution, improper land management, and invasive species. So it's really important for us to be targeting sites like this, where there's this relict irreplaceable habitat, because although BNG can't really apply to those because they're already really high value, we can buffer around them. So with this site, we'll be creating loads of scrub around it to expand it out, stop leaching from going into the river, and hopefully connect it up with other fragmented parcels of woodland in the area. So it's a way that we can indirectly contribute to ensuring the resilience of these habitats in the long run to protect what's left, essentially.
Fantastic. Wow, that sounds so great. So just to wrap up a little bit, I'm keen to find out from both of you, where do you see the future of BNG going?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a young sector, obviously, that's maturing fast. Firstly, we see that demand will significantly outstrip supply for the foreseeable future. Amendments to the policy, to legislation are expected, but we're not expecting anything truly significant in that. And then the voluntary market, so this is really corporates with ESG credentials. We see this as a new market that will emerge and is slowly emerging. And really the potential of this is huge. And what it will mean is that demand will obviously increase, but also the sales process is simple, where planning is not needed in order to complete the transaction. So that's quite an exciting prospect for landowners and for Biofarm. And really, we're really excited by the future of like the natural capital sector in general, and the opportunity for this generation, next generation, with careers and jobs, and able to actually make a decent living out of nature. But also, also do some really amazing stuff, and we're excited by the projects going forward.
Good, amazing. And you, Evie, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess I'd just echo that in obviously with any emerging nascent market, there's going to be levels of uncertainty in areas that need to be thickened out. But we are seeing that, and we're seeing a lot of positive noise from the government, even in the last week, about protecting existing legislation around habitats and species. So we're feeling really positive. We're feeling that it's backed, and that now it's just a case of actually working out how to implement it, and sort of enjoying the rewards, I guess, and helping the landowners get to that point where, it's a lot of talk, and we've been discussing this for a while. So it's good to reap the rewards of it, I guess, and see them prosper in nature and financially as well.
So I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining. I have learned so much, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have learned so much about BNG and biodiversity and how your company can help them as well. So where can we find you? Where can we learn more? How can we contact you, please?
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having us. So, I would say do go to LinkedIn, find us and follow us on LinkedIn. But also our website, and we have recently rebranded, and so we are proud of our website, which is biofarm.co.uk.
Just a special thanks again to Chris and Evie from Biofarm for joining us, and to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you are a farmer, a landowner, or a rural business exploring new opportunities, we hope today's episode has given you a lot of insight and sparked your interest on how you can make nature a part of your growth story.